On Christmas morning, while most families were sitting together, opening gifts and sharing laughter, I was standing in the middle of my own house, being thrown out by my own father like I was nothing more than a burden. My name is Grace Brown, and this is the story of how my father charged me rent in a house that legally belonged to me, kicked me out on Christmas morning, and how he eventually paid the price with his own eviction. After my grandfather passed away 3 years ago, he left his house to me in his will. But my father refused to transfer the ownership in my name. He told me that if I wanted to stay in the house, I would have to pay rent every month. I didn't want to fight with my family, so I agreed. Every month, without fail, I transferred money into my father's account. I also paid the electricity, gas, and maintenance bills. My younger sister lived in the same house, but never contributed anything. On Christmas morning, I was in the kitchen making coffee when my father walked in with a serious expression. "Grace," he said, "pack your things and leave the house today." I turned around, confused. "What are you talking about, Dad?" He didn't even look guilty. He simply replied, "Your sister is getting engaged next month. She needs her own space. You've been living here long enough. It's time you find your own place." I stared at him in disbelief. "Dad, this is my house. Grandpa left it to me, and I've been paying rent for the last 3 years." My father's face hardened. "This house belongs to me now. I'm the head of this family, and I decided that your sister will stay here. You need to leave." Before I could say anything, my sister walked into the kitchen holding a cup of tea. She looked at me and smiled coldly. "Good luck starting over, Grace. I'm sure you'll manage somehow." I felt like the ground had been pulled from under my feet. I had paid rent every single month. I had taken care of the house, and now they were throwing me out on Christmas morning like I was some unwanted guest. I stood there in silence for a few seconds. Then, without saying a word, I turned around and went upstairs. I packed whatever I could into 2 suitcases. Before leaving, I took one last thing from my room, a small wooden box that my grandfather had given me before he died. He had told me to only open it when I was in serious trouble. I came downstairs, dragging my suitcases behind me. My father didn't even look at me. My sister was still smiling. As I reached the door, she said one last thing. "Don't come crawling back when you fail." I didn't reply. I simply walked out and closed the door behind me. I had no way to go. I had no savings because I had been giving almost my entire salary as rent. The only thing I had was the small wooden box my grandfather gave me. With no other option, I took a taxi and went straight to the bank. I remembered my grandfather once telling me that if I ever faced serious trouble, I should go to his bank and show them the box. When I reached the bank, I asked to meet the manager. After waiting for some time, I was called into his office. I placed the wooden box on his table and told him that my grandfather had given it to me. The manager looked at the box, then at me. He slowly opened it. Inside were some old documents and a small black card. The moment he saw the card, his face completely changed. He looked at me with wide eyes, then quickly stood up and locked the office door. He turned around, looked at me seriously, and said in a low voice, "Miss, you need to sit down." I sat down slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. The bank manager locked the door and walked back to his chair. He looked at me with a serious expression and said, "Miss Brown, do you know what's inside this box?" I shook my head. "My grandfather gave it to me before he died. He said I should only open it if I was in serious trouble." The manager opened the box again and took out some documents. He placed them in front of me and said, "Your grandfather didn't just leave you this house. He transferred the ownership of this house in your name 2 years before he passed away. This box contains the original property papers, along with some investments he made in your name." I stared at the papers, unable to believe what I was reading. The manager continued, "Not only that, but your grandfather also left you some shares and fixed deposits. the total value of everything he left for you is over $480,000. I felt like the ground beneath me had disappeared. For 3 years, I had been paying rent to my father in a house that was already mine. I had been struggling financially while my father and sister lived comfortably, all because they hid the truth from me. The manager looked at me and said, "Miss Brown, according to these documents, your father had no legal right to charge you rent. In fact, what he did can be considered illegal. If you want, we can help you take legal action." I sat there in silence for a long time. Different emotions were running through me: shock, anger, and a strange sense of betrayal. My own father had been taking money from me every month for a house that already belonged to me. That day, I didn't go back to any friend's house. I booked a hotel room and spent the entire night going through all the documents. The more I read, the angrier I became. My grandfather had trusted my father to take care of me. Instead, my father had used me for money. Over the next few months, I slowly started rebuilding my life. I used some of the money from the investments to rent a small apartment and focused on my career. I worked harder than ever before. Within 2 years, I got promoted, then promoted again. By the time I turned 29, I was working as a senior operations manager in a well-known company. I had built a stable life for myself, but I never forgot what my father and sister did to me. One evening, while I was checking some property records online, something caught my attention. My father had taken a large loan against the house a few months ago. He was struggling to pay it back. The bank had already sent him multiple notices. That's when an idea started forming in my mind. I quietly bought back the loan from the bank. In simple words, I became the one my father now owed money to. He had no idea that the person who now held power over his house was his own daughter. A few weeks later, I received a call from my father for the first time in years. His voice sounded stressed. "Grace, I need to talk to you. It's important." I stayed silent for a few seconds before replying, "I'm listening." He hesitated and then said, "The bank is pressuring me about the house. They're saying if I don't pay the loan soon, they will take legal action. I was hoping you could help me." I looked out of my office window and replied calmly, "I'll think about it." I ended the call. That night, I sat alone in my apartment and made a decision. My father had charged me rent in a house that was already mine. He threw me out on Christmas morning without any guilt. Now it was time for him to understand what it feels like to lose everything. And I was going to make sure he paid the last bill with his own eviction. After I bought back the loan from the bank, I didn't rush. I waited for the right moment. My father had no idea that the person who now held the power to evict him from the house was his own daughter. For the next 2 months, I stayed silent. I didn't call him. I didn't message him. I simply waited. Then, one evening, my father called me again. His voice sounded even more stressed than before. "Grace, the bank is giving me a final notice. They said if I don't clear the loan within 30 days, they will take legal action and evict us from the house. I don't know what to do." I stayed quiet for a few seconds before replying, "I'll come to the house tomorrow. We'll talk." The next day, I drove to my childhood home. When I reached there, my father and sister were both waiting in the living room. My father looked tired and worried. My sister, on the other hand, looked annoyed, as if my presence was disturbing her. My father stood up when he saw me. "Grace, thank God you came. Did you think about what I asked you last time? Can you help us with the loan?" I looked at both of them calmly and said, "I already helped you." They both looked confused.
"What do you mean?" my father asked. I opened my bag and placed some documents on the table. "I bought your loan from the bank 2 months ago. That means you don't owe the bank anymore. You owe me." My father's face turned pale. My sister's eyes widened in shock. You bought the loan?" my father asked in a low voice. I nodded. "Yes, and according to the agreement, if you fail to repay the full amount within the given time, I have the legal right to take possession of this house." My sister suddenly stood up. "Are you crazy, Grace? This is our house. You can't just throw us out like this." I looked at her coldly and replied, "This house was never yours to begin with. Grandpa left it to me. And for 3 years, I paid rent in my own house while you two lived here for free. Now, it's time for you to understand what it feels like to lose everything." My father looked at me with a mix of anger and desperation. "Grace, we're still your family. You can't do this to us." I looked at him and said, "You stopped being my family the day you threw me out on Christmas morning. You told me girls like me don't deserve a life. Well, I built my own life, and now I'm taking back what was always mine." My sister tried to argue, but I cut her off. "You have 30 days to vacate this house. After that, legal proceedings will begin." I picked up my bag and walked toward the door. Before leaving, I turned around one last time and said, "Consider this your final notice." Exactly 30 days later, my father and sister were evicted from the house. I didn't go there personally. I let the legal team handle everything, but I received photos in a report that they had to leave with whatever they could carry. My father tried to contact me one last time after the eviction. He sent me a message saying, "I hope you're happy now. You destroyed your own family." I didn't reply. Today, I live in that same house, the one my grandfather left for me. I run my own small logistics company and live a peaceful life. I don't have any contact with my father or sister anymore. Sometimes I think about that Christmas morning when my father threw me out. If he hadn't done that, maybe I would have still been living under his control, paying rent in my own house and sacrificing my dreams for my brother. But because he did, I became someone he now fears. I didn't just survive what they did to me, I made sure they paid the last bill with their own eviction.